Welcome to Real GM Radio. Adam Mata is here. We're talking about NBA trade deadline winners and losers. Let's jump in. Welcome to Real GM Radio. I'm Wes Goldberg here with Adam Matas. You know him from DNVR Sports, the All NBA podcast. Also my former co-host on Locked On NBA, which we also recorded on Fridays. Adam, this is our day. How was your trade deadline day, though?
It's good. I hope we're getting the power rankings at the end of the show, man. We got to count something down.
We'll count something down. We can always count something down. We got a bunch to get into. We're going to do winners and losers. But before we get into that, what team do you think is going to be most disappointed that they didn't do anything by the end of the season?
Yeah, you prepped me for this one, and I think it's kind of tough because the teams you're looking at, Denver didn't do anything, Minnesota didn't do anything, and I think that would be a lot of people's answers because you're trying to create the separation in the West. I still buy both of those teams, even without the moves, and when you look at what they were capable, both teams were capable of, it's not a surprise that neither one made a big move, so I don't know if it's them. As you go down the list, the team that I love, they've been my side piece team for most of the year, but they are hit hard times, is the Orlando Magic. And they're another team that didn't really make a big shakeup. I understand why they didn't. They're a team that, like, this summer is probably, you go through a good playoff run with your group and you figure out what you have and you make your adjustments. You never want to adjust too soon to your roster when you're as young as they are. But they are a team right now that I think a month ago you had aspirations they could be a top 4 seed, top 5, somewhere in there. They're in the play-in, they're reeling, and they're reeling in ways that I think they can overcome when everybody gets healthy and starts playing, but I never thought it was natural. Like all the players on the roster, they need some more shooting. They have a surplus of defense and overlap at some of their front court positions. So they're a team that I think when you just talk about this year, their odds of making a run now feel so short, right? Or for so long, I should say. They don't feel like a team that is going to make it to the second round. And if they would have made a move at this deadline and given themselves a little more shooting, I think, I would be back to being intrigued. But they got blown out by Denver last night. They're on a huge extended losing streak, when you look at what they've done over the last 20 games. And I think they're a team that probably could have used some kind of move.
They're really missing Jalen Suggs, aren't they?
Their best player?
Yeah.
Or maybe second best player? I mean,
yeah.
Here's the thing. I love the Magic and I love all their players, but I have a hot take about them. I think Franz is their best player. I think Suggs is their second best player. And I think Banchero is their highest upside player. But Banchero, as talented as he is, of all the players in the NBA, Banchero's probably in my top 5 guys of the skill set he has versus how he applies it frustrates me the most. And he's young enough. He's had injuries that I can almost excuse it. But you watch the way he operates, and it's almost like he has these complex moves that he knows what he's doing going into it. Like, as in he's not reading it. He's just like, all right, I'm going to go to this move. And a lot of them are 6-7 dribbles and get you to a tough shot mid-range. He's great at those. But I feel like he has all these talents that he can really figure out how to prioritize them in a way that he hasn't hit yet. So I think he'll be their best player in short order. But if I was saying right now, not having Suggs, it's going to be hard for them to win without him. It was hard to win without Franz Wagner. And if both of those two guys are there and Paolo's out, I think it's not that hard for them to win. So I know it's a hot take. Magic fans are going to hate me, but
I couldn't figure out if you were talking about Paolo Banchero or Julius Randle there.
He's on the list. Jalen Green's on the list.
Paolo gets those comparisons to Carmelo Anthony all the time, and that's great. But Carmelo Anthony is just like an all-timer, right? And he also didn't impact winning at a very high level. But in terms of just the scoring output and all that stuff, the other version of that could be like a Julius Randle type. I'm still a Paolo guy, but
me too.
Yeah, so the Magic are in a tricky spot because I was team don't do anything. This past offseason when people were talking about, like, should they get Anthony Simons? Should they go after this point guard or that guy, whatever? And I was all about don't do anything. Let's see what Paolo and Franz are all about. Let's put them in the John Taffer stress test bar rescue and just see if they can come out the other side better playmakers, better players. And I think I'm still there, but they lost so much time from the injuries that it feels like, look, they still have the rest of the season to figure that part out, but it felt like they lost so much time.
Yeah.
And they're starting to walk that edge of, all right, how much do we want to just kind of be young, fun team just figuring it out versus, well, Paolo was kind of making an all-star push before he got hurt. Franz Wagner was making an all-star push before. Maybe they do just need that other guy. And all these guys are injury prone. I'm glad they didn't go full in for De'Aaron Fox or something like that. But I do wonder something smaller than that, but more than Cole Anthony. Like what's that sweet spot for Orlando? And where you don't have to mortgage the future, but it could just it's a relief valve for some of those guys.
Well, first of all, that's the Grand Canyon size gap between going all in and Cole Anthony. There's no wider gap than that. No,
Somewhere in the middle.
No offense to Cole Anthony, but your central question is the most important one, and this is where the season kind of screwed them, right? Do we know the answer to that question about Franz and Paolo? And then on top of that, you've also got Wendell Carter and Jonathan Isaac, and it's entirely possible that those two work, but then it means we have to really build around, we have to be really deliberate in what we put around those pieces. And then you talk about the shooting from the guard spot. There's a shift in the NBA right now. Denver, in many ways, started it, back in 2023 with Aaron Gordon, who's like a traditional power forward, a throwback power forward, and Jokic, who's a throwback center, and you play big. Minnesota plays big. You've got Dallas, who just traded Luka freaking Doncic so they could go big. There is this shift to, if you have skilled players at those positions, not just big brutes, but skill players, and both of those guys are skill players, that it actually is an advantage at that point, that all of a sudden now you can do the guard type things, but now you're too big for teams on the other end of the floor. So there is precedent for this, for what they're doing, but in order to make that work, you have to have some kind of elite three-point shooting, either from your bigs or from your backcourt. Dallas has that. Minnesota does not necessarily have that, and it's the central question for them. Can they get enough shooting and spacing to make this viable? Denver has had it traditionally, although this year maybe a little bit less. Orlando has none of it. I mean, they're a zero basically on that. You got KCP, who can give you a little bit, although I think his spacing might be a little, I want to say overrated, because he doesn't move a lot on offense. Right. He's kind of a stagnant, standstill guy. So to me, I don't know that we are. And then with the injuries, I don't know that I'm any closer to answering that question than I was this time last year. And now you're at a point. So that's probably why they didn't make a move at the deadline. But even going into the summer, whatever happens in the next 2 to 3 months, how confident will we be in knowing exactly what the strengths and weaknesses are of that pairing? I feel like we're not going to be that confident, but unfortunately, that's how the NBA works. You have to make decisions on hunches and try to figure that thing out as you go.
So here's my answer to this question, and I'm just going to say it. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah.
I respect Sam Presti and the job he's done as much as anybody else, but I just wish sometimes he would go all in. And I thought this even during the Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden era, when he really didn't flush out the rest of that supporting cast with vets who are ready to win now. And he really isn't doing that now. And sometimes I just wish he would stop staring through his draft pick kaleidoscope and just make a trade.
Yeah. For
a good player who you think can win right now. And even the Gordon Hayward thing last year was more of a salary payroll thing than it was like, we think Hayward can help us. So they're, I think, an outside shooter away from feeling even better than, look, they're favorites. I don't want to, like, they are one of the favorites, and rightfully so. But if they don't win the championship, it's going to be because the shooting kind of goes through the floor again, the way that it did last year in the postseason. They have one elite shooter, Isaiah Joe. Everybody else is okay shooters, okay to good shooters, but nobody that's going to demand that you face guard him or close out or feel like if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has the ball and he runs a ball screen, like a small ball screen, somebody that's going to strike fear in the defender and maybe make them lunge the wrong way for a half second so that Shai can get to the basket. I just feel like they're that shooter away, and I don't know what shooter was out there that's available, but that doesn't matter for the Thunder because they have a bazillion draft picks. They can use a third of their picks and do basically what the Lakers did and just go pinpoint their player, say, I know he's not on the market, but we're going to make them an offer that they can't refuse. And the Thunder are in a better position than anybody else to do that, and they have a bunch of contracts that they could stack up. I know that they like their guys and they don't want to shake it up, but sometimes I'm wondering if the Thunder don't win it at the end. I do wonder if we look back at the deadline and be like, they probably should have been a little bit more aggressive at the deadline and tried to do something, and it just didn't sound like they were trying to do anything.
The toughest part about all of this, and I wonder, like, traditionally, especially over the last 15 years, teams have taken the long view. Sam Hinkie famously said, we're going to have the longest view in the room, and that's our advantage. Of course, that blew up for a million reasons we could rehash. But I wonder if this new CBA the way it works, and really there's not just that, it's also the evolution of, there's a lot of talented players coming into the league, a lot of players with the new skill set that grew up shooting threes and playing switch defense and stuff. There's so many of those players, and the CBA is so restrictive that I wonder if the long view is now a weakness. If now you almost have to look at things this year and next year, and beyond that, who knows what happens.
Right.
And then you compound that with the fact that Chet Holmgren has been in the league for less than 3 years. He's missed 1.5 of those. So if you say, hey, we have time, at the moment, we're looking at a very mobile 7-footer who's rail thin, and we're saying, oh, but next year he'll be healthy. And the year after that, like, we have a window of this. This might be the healthiest you get all of your core players. And I do think teams have to operate on something of a short window, but Sam Presti has set himself up to be able to achieve both. I think the Thunder are top 3 contender this year. Easy, no questions asked. And they still have all of those assets and things to do. So if they flame out, especially if they don't make it to the conference finals, I think everybody's going to say that. But at the end of the day, I understand why they're operating the way they're operating.
So let's get to some of the winners and losers. This one I just need help on. I've got a bunch of winners. I feel pretty good about my opinion on that. I feel good about my opinion on a bunch of these losers. Here's the one I can't figure out. The Milwaukee Bucks. Did they win or lose? Because they trade Khris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma. There's some other stuff in that deal, but that's the nuts and bolts. That's the meat and the potatoes there. So they break up Khris Middleton and Giannis, who had played 12 seasons together, 700 games together, won a championship together, shared 3 All-Star appearances with each other. They break up that duo, and they do it for NBA player / Instagram influencer Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah. You forgot the second part of this deal, though, too, because I put these in tandem. They get Kevin Porter Jr. You absorb him into your locker room. And here's where, look, there's a basketball argument to be made. It's a tough one. You have to kind of squint for it. Middleton had been so unreliable for health reasons beyond his control. And even, so then you talk about what is it we're going to put our bet on. And Middleton, when you had Drew Holiday, had an especially valuable role of his ability to handle the ball at end of games, and you can run that 2-man action. You've got Damian Lillard now. Your team dynamics are different. So does that weaken some of the value? I think the answer is yes when you talk about also the health factor and just, hey, we need to be healthy at that moment and give Giannis a chance. Like Giannis, same with Jokic. If you're healthy there, have guys that know what they're doing, and you have the best player on the floor, there's a chance. And I think that's their hope. The problem is Middleton is a pro. He's a pro's pro, and Damian Lillard's a pro's pro, and Giannis is a pro's pro. You are trying to establish a locker room and a culture and an identity that says, hey, we are a mature team. We're going to, at least we lose, we're going to go down swinging, knowing that we operate the way we operate. You bring in a Kuzma, who in the past has proven to do this, but he's coming off of a stint with the Wizards, which is very unserious basketball. I mean, that's just the nature of where he was. And then you bring in Kevin Porter Jr., to me, who is such a wild card. I know he's a small bit player here. So you lost Marjan Beauchamp. It's not like you lost anything of value, but you're still absorbing someone into your culture that does not necessarily fit all those things that I just said. And that alone, to me, Kuzma in, Porter in, changes your culture whether you want it to or not. Can those guys buy in? Absolutely. Do they have skill sets that can add to you? But your team culture and identity, to me, is now at risk of saying we are relying on these guys who have a reputation rightfully earned in this degree. And we have 2 months to absorb them into our culture and not us lose something by bringing them in. To me, that's why I think they're a loser of this. It might work out. You could cut this clip and then throw it in my face whenever they win the title. But I just look at that and say that's a risk I would not be comfortable with if I was a Bucks fan.
Because on one hand, I understand what they did, right? Khris Middleton was a 0 for them. It's unfortunate, but he was. You couldn't rely on him on a night-to-night basis because you just didn't know whether he was going to be healthy, right? And there were games where he scored like 19 points off the bench on efficient shooting and stuff, but you just never knew and you couldn't plan for it. And I think Milwaukee just decided this isn't going to work in the playoffs if we're not going to know on an every other day basis what kind of Khris Middleton we're going to get. So given that that's the Khris Middleton that exists now, I could buy it that if Kyle Kuzma was just simply the best player available, right? And they just said, we just kind of hold our nose and just say, we got to do something here. So,
and he's the caliber player that, if he's around good players, his job is easier and he has the skill set to do that. So, I mean, I get the argument.
But then again, it's Kyle Kuzma. And that's kind of where I go back on it, right? And it's like, I can't figure out whether I like it or not. The idea of Kyle Kuzma is good. This kind of feels like, do you remember when Doc Rivers was kind of running stuff with the Clippers and he would just go grab names, like Josh Smith and Paul Pierce, and you would just be like, I know that's a recognizable name. I'm going to go grab him. We're going to add him to the roster. And they had like a bunch of young guys on the roster that just never played, and they just kept playing veterans whose names he knew.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that was what they did with Porter and Kuzma here, right? Which doesn't make me feel awesome about it.
Yeah.
And I think overall, just the sense of what's going on in Milwaukee, that's the problem here. Like they treat Giannis like a toddler who just won't stop crying, so they just keep showing him different kinds of toys, hoping that one of them makes him happy. And they're like, "Oh my God, no! Like Damian Lillard over here, and maybe a Kyle Kuzma. No, look over here, and maybe that'll make you happy." And by the way, I don't think that they have to do that. I think Giannis is ready to just try to win in Milwaukee. I understand that they're worried about his long-term future, but it's every single time things get a little rocky, they just start showing him new toys, and eventually, I just think it's not gonna work. But I don't know, maybe this one does. It feels like Kuzma has another level of basketball to get to. He was not playing well in Washington. Yeah. Maybe this is a situation like with Aaron Gordon, who you mentioned before, or with PJ Washington with Dallas last year, where you take him out of basketball Siberia and you just save him.
Yeah, first of all, Gary Trent Jr., DeLon Wright also fit this. These are names like you win the signing because like, oh, they got Gary Trent, man. Everybody wanted. That's a name we know. We know that guy. He's a player. And sometimes it's you do that or you take a little bit of a risk on a guy that's lesser known. But you just said basketball Siberia. The thing with Kuzma to me is like your buddy in college who he's up and down. He had a steady job for a while, but he spent the last 2 years in Chiapas, Mexico, smoking peyote. And you're like vouching for him. Like, no, but he's a good guy. He's a good guy. It's like, well,
he's got a business degree.
He's got a business degree. Like years back, he was doing this stuff. It's like, well, the last 2 years, so that's where it's not Siberia.
Wearing a lot
he's
of parkas these days.
Yeah, Washington is like, has he been building good habits down in Washington? Now flip the switch and become the role player we think your best version is. Again, maybe. I'm probably being too hard on this. I just am such a believer in culture and identity. And those types of things. And it really only matters when you're a top level team. And they might not be that, but when you're a top level team, now it's about, okay, who's culture, who's cohesive, who knows exactly what the goal is. And everybody just buys into that. And you're bringing in two guys that have not consistently proven to do that. In fact, the opposite in that direction more recently. And you're asking them to do that. So it could work out. It's a risk, but it's not one I love. And that's why I think they're a loser of the deadline.
Okay, I'll go loser. I was asking you. You're going loser. I know Khris Middleton is a loser. What a way for this to end. Washington?
I know.
And they're not even. And there was a little speculation that maybe they'll retrade him somewhere. And they're like, no, we're good. We're going to hold on to him. And Khris Middleton was like, really?
Yeah.
You sure?
He might have a final act after this, though. I am kind of curious. He plays out this contract, or even, I think, is he expiring next year, I think?
It's after next year.
After next year. So, there's a chance that he gets a final act, which I think would be cool if he's a guy that comes off the bench for a team and helps them over the hump. But certainly he's going to end up spending a year, in Washington, probably not having the best time.
Just watching Jordan Poole dribble the ball, and he's going to be like, what happened to me?
What are we doing?
How did it get to this? Let's jump into some winners here. All right. I'm going to start with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think they're the biggest winner, at least in the Eastern Conference, because obviously, not doing Luka. We already did a video on Luka earlier in the week. We're not doing the Luka stuff. So other than the Lakers, I think the Cavs getting DeAndre Hunter, to me, Adam, it reminded me, the first thing I thought about was the Raptors trading for Marc Gasol in 2019.
Yeah, that's good.
Where that team was just cranking out wins in the regular season, looked every bit as a contender. Like, wow, look, Kawhi Leonard, what the Raptors are doing, this is a great team. And then they go make that move for Marc Gasol, and we're like, whoa, they're all in right now. And there wasn't an obvious need there. Like Serge Ibaka was pretty good and all this stuff, but that was a move aimed directly at the playoffs. And the series and the teams that they knew that they were going to play, they wanted Marc Gasol's decision-making and his defense, specifically in a matchup against Golden State potentially, and all of that stuff. They get it. They get Marc Gasol. They win the title. I don't know that the Cavaliers are going to win the title, but getting DeAndre Hunter reminds me of that, where there wasn't an obvious need there. I mean, if you were going to upgrade anywhere, it was going to be on the wing, but they didn't need it. They were cranking out regular season wins, and they looked like a favorite and everything like that. But getting DeAndre Hunter, that is a 6'8" body with a 7-foot wingspan who can go toe-to-toe and match bodies with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And even when the Hawks beat the Celtics last month, DeAndre Hunter spent all his time on the court guarding one of Tatum or Brown. So I'm sure the Cavs saw that. They said, that guy's pretty good at it. He's available. Let's go get him. He also leads the league in 20-plus point per game guys who come off the bench. So I think it's going to upgrade their offense. I think it's going to upgrade their defense. I love the versatility of it. They just desperately needed a two-way wing who wasn't going to get played off the floor in the playoffs on one end of the court or the other, and he's not going to. So I love the move for them. I think it's the kind of move that can swing the title. I think it's that big.
100% agree. I mean, he is, to me, they're the winner of the East, and there's no question. I think, anytime you would acquire Luka Doncic at 25, you're going to be the ultimate winner. So I know we'll get to that in a moment. But if we talk about functional winners for this season, to me, it's no brainer. And I love the comparison to the Toronto, because like Toronto, you're winning a bunch of games, but you could see the gap. Like, I just don't know if they have the defensive presence inside. And then you add it. To me, elite defense on the interior between Mobley and Allen, just elite, as good as it gets in the NBA. Yeah. Elite offense and creation from your two lead guards in Garland and Donovan Mitchell, and great shooting everywhere. You just got guys like Max Strus that know what they're doing. But if you had a question for them, the games they haven't looked great, you look at the wings and you say, I just don't know if they have the two-way wing that can play in a series, in particular against their biggest threat, which is the Boston Celtics. And to a lesser extent, you can even say this about teams like the New York Knicks or Indiana Pacers. DeAndre Hunter's phenomenal. I mean, he can score, and I actually like the ways in which he does score. Sometimes when you get a scorer off the bench, it's like, some nights you just got to let him do his thing, and it's not right. He's not that.
LeVert was a little bit like that, right?
100%. And Karis LeVert played great in the role that he was given. So there was a level of like Karis LeVert, even life is easier in the system that they have with all the spacing, shooting, and rim pressure. So now you get DeAndre Hunter in there, who I think already has a natural positive shot selection to him. He should be getting better shots than he got before, probably fewer, but higher profile ones. And he fits into that system. But defensively, I look at this and I go, he was a good defender in Atlanta. And, he doesn't get a ton of blocks and steals, but he's a really good guy at just like, hey, we need you to make this guy's life hard. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, we need you to do that. And I think he's a guy that will do that at a pretty high level. Maybe not one of the elite ones in the NBA, but the second tier of that, right below the elite wing shutdown guys. He can do that. But he might be elite when you have given Mobley and Allen behind you, because now you can be a little bit more aggressive and you can take a little bit more risk. And then on top of that, I don't know I haven't thought this through, so don't yell at me. But in Atlanta, is he the fourth best player there? I love Trey, Jalen Johnson. And after that, you start to, what do you value? Out there, he's clearly the fifth best player, right? Like they have so many good guys that it's like, you don't need to be that. Guard your man, pick your spots, do what you do. I think this is a home run move. I didn't see it coming because I should have thought about it. Maybe I would have thought that was a place they should go after, but brilliant move by their front office. And for the first time this year, I'm seriously look at them as Boston's equal, and I think before we see the record, this or that. And I know Cavs fans will be upset about, hey, we have a better record than them. Yeah, but we knew the matchup was going to be tough. Now I look at it and I go, I'm so ready for that series because I think it's a really good matchup.
I'm with you. Question: if they sign Ben Simmons, do they remove their name from the winner's circle here? Do they just sort of surrender their status here?
Is that a rumor?
That is the rumor. He is taking a meeting as of us recording. He's going to be taking a meeting today with the Cavs, the Clippers, and the Rockets. So that's fun. But
first of all, I'll just say this. I do like Ben Simmons. Sure. That's a weird fit to me. I'd have to really think about it. They do have shooting. That might be what I'm talking about with Kevin Porter, though, where it's like you have a good team and now you're going to introduce, and it's not, I think he's a low character guy or anything like that, but there's
a media circus around it.
Not even the media circus. It's more that his game is so unbalanced. Right. Like you don't want to get into a playoff series where he passed up a layup and now that's the story. Right. And now your team is focused on this thing that had nothing to do with them for 2/3 of your season. Right. And now it's the story. So that's the tough part.
I would stay away from it if I were them. But when you lose Karis LeVert, they are on a little bit of a ball handling deficit. They are really susceptible now to a Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell injury. Max Strus can do a little bit of on-ball stuff, but I don't know that you want him doing it. He's more of like a second or maybe even like third kind of creator at best. Karis LeVert was good at that. At least they trusted him in those settings. Ty Jerome, I think, has been really good, even though he's kind of cooled off a little bit. He's probably the guy they're going to ask a lot of, but I do wonder if there's another guard out there that they can go out and get that's not named Ben Simmons, who can just be a little bit more of an adult in the room in case they need it. My next winner here, I've got Mark Williams.
That's just funny.
Like he's the winner.
I mean, for sure.
Leave Charlotte, go to the Lakers.
Yeah.
Where he's going to be set up by two of the best passers the league has ever seen, and currently maybe the best lob thrower in the game in Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
He might. You know what? I take it back. The Cavaliers are not the biggest winner. Mark Williams is the biggest winner of the trade deadline. He didn't even know this was happening. This was like waking up in April and it's Christmas morning and you have a ton of presents. You're like, I didn't even know we had the tree ready. Like, I didn't even know this was happening. It's like, here you go. Here's a surprise thing that changes your life. Congratulations. It's like winning the lottery without playing.
I haven't thought of this angle, and I actually love it because I think the big winner is the Lakers. But you are right that if we broke it down even smaller than that, the big winner is Mark Williams because he's a good player. He's been injured a lot. He's a good player. You know what everybody's going to start asking themselves in the next 24 months? Is he the best center in the NBA? Like, would you rather have Mark Williams than Jokic given the weaknesses here? And it's like, no, he's shooting 80% because he just gets the ball fed to him right in the rim.
No, you missed the segment there. It's in 2 months, it's going to be, are the Lakers better off with Mark Williams than Anthony Davis?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You're right.
That's the first take segment.
That's the angle because, he's better at the lobs, which is all you kind of need. I mean, we've seen this with a lot of centers in the past. Tyson Chandler was a great defensive player. Offensively, need this. Rudy Gobert, same thing. You give him the lob, you give him a great lob thrower, and all of a sudden you're like, is Rudy Gobert's #1 in the league in offensive rating? And it's like, well, okay, like maybe. That's what Mark Williams is going to be. His numbers will be through the roof. They were already through the roof with LaMelo, who's a great player and, in Charlotte. But you give him Luka Doncic. And by the way, LeBron James is not a bad. He'll never be on the court without one of those guys.
Right.
Every big has to play a couple minutes a game with like, all right, this guy can't throw the lob or whatever. Not him. He will have a lob threat at all times, giving him easy passes. They need him to offensive rebound. Anytime you ask a player to do the thing they love doing most, he's going to do it. So I think this is a great take. Mark Williams was looking at his next contract and wondering what he was going to get paid. Ooh. He might get paid a max, playing with Luka Doncic.
And you better give half of it to Luka.
Yeah, for sure.
He's like, I know that the state income taxes moving from Texas to California, this will cover it.
Yeah, exactly.
The other part of this trade too, and look, I think Mark Williams is a little bit of a polarizing player. I don't think anybody thought of him as that until he got traded to the Lakers, and then everybody's like, is he good? Is he bad? Are you worried about the injuries? Is this a good trade? Did they pay too much? All of this stuff. Here's the one thing I'll say about Mark Williams, who he's been one of my guys since college. I loved him in the draft, and so I have a soft spot for Mark Williams, and he's a good player. He does need to stay healthy. That's the big risk here. But everybody keeps calling him a 7-footer. He's not 7 feet.
Yeah.
He's 7'2".
Yeah, it's different.
It's different. He's one of the largest humans on the planet, and I don't think that we think about that enough. It's why I would have bet everything I had if this was a thing that Zach Edey was going to be picked in the top 10. The guy's too huge. Yeah. And if you just have an option as a general manager to push a button and get one of the largest humans on the planet in a league that demands that you have size, the league has shown you 10 times out of 10 they usually do it. And so not only do you have the historical precedent of basketball teams want big basketball players, but you're also talking about a Western Conference where you're going to have to go through Nikola Jokic, and we know what size means in that matchup, and also Victor Wembanyama coming up.
Yeah.
And when the difference between 7'2" and 7 foot is dramatic, because now there's a lot of 6'11", 7 foot guys in the league. There ain't a lot of guys bigger than that.
Yeah,
you can pretty much count them on one hand. Guys who are eligible to start and not, Taco Fall kind of guys. But that's it, man. And so I think this is a home run. All the injury risk and all those kinds of concerns, baked into it. You kind of have to do this.
Yeah, and if your hope that you could develop the chemistry or what have you. I love your point about the 7-footer though. Like 7+ is what we got to start calling, because I feel like 7 foot and 7'1". All right. 7'3", like Porzingis is 7'3", and we think of him this way. 7'2" is like that middle ground where we're not sure. But what tilts it in his favor is his standing reach is insane. Right. He can touch the rim flat-footed, just with his hand up. So he a longer standing reach than Victor Wembanyama, which is insane. And that's really what I have this thing about height. It was who was it? I always forget who it was. Played for UConn that had the longest neck, and he was a 7-footer. But I was always like, you know what? That's a 6'7" guy with a really long neck. And so like this or that. And then you have some guys with no shoulders, no neck, but their standing reach is so long. To me, what really matters for bigs is standing reach. He's the #1. So I agree with you. He's 7+. He's going to be very good there if he stays healthy. But the other thing about 7+ players, they get hurt a lot. And when you're talking about a lob threat at 7+, and he's already missed 2/3 of his career so far, it's obviously a huge risk for the Lakers.
Yeah. Everything out of Charlotte was optimism before the trade, so I'm assuming that and
you don't think they were like before the trade, like I just think he'll never play.
Right.
But you guys should trade for him. You should totally give us Dalton Connected a first, but I don't think he'll play.
Right. The other thing about being in LA, and you know this, Adam, like every time a player has to get surgery or see a specialist, it's always in Los Angeles. It's always in Los Angeles. And the Lakers did a really nice job of basically rehabbing Anthony Davis, who was as injury prone as it gets, to basically being durable the last 2 years. So maybe there's some trust there in their own track record in terms of health. Next winner here. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I have the Miami Heat. I have the Heat as a winner. They turned a zero, a guy who was suspended indefinitely and didn't want to be there, into 3 rotation players. They got everything that they wanted ahead of the draft when they said, look, we need role players who are going to help us win now. We want future cap flexibility, and we want some draft assets. And they got all 3 of those things. And now I'm looking at this roster. They have 3 all-stars, kind of, between Wiggins and Tyler Hero. They have a 3-time all-star in Bam Adebayo. They're positioned to rebuild. They have up to 3 tradable first-round picks this summer. All things considered, I've argued that they should have traded Jimmy Butler months ago when they decided that they didn't want to give him the extension. But given what the context of this was and the spot that they were in, I kind of think they hit a home run before the deadline. I have them as a winner here.
So I was so curious what you thought about it. They're not where, first of all, it's not where I would have gone next. I know we'll get to some other winners, but I do agree with you that we're thinking of Jimmy Butler as the best version of him, which is gone. That guy was gone months ago. And what you recouped here in Andrew Wiggins, to me, could he be like, you always wonder about Miami guys. Some guys go to Miami and get way better. Could he be that? And I'm like, some guys I'm like 80-20 for sure. That's a Miami guy. That's perfect. Jimmy Butler to me was like a 100. Like he's going to be good there for the time he was there. Wiggins is like a 55-45 to me. I think he's a Miami guy. I think it's going to work out, but I'm not sure. But to your broader point, they now have a coherent lineup. And when you talk about having good, like if your best players are going to be filling certain roles, what would they be? Defensive-minded center who switches everything, sets good screens, can pass. Tyler Hero, who runs around and shoots threes, gunner. And then Andrew Wiggins, who can do everything in between and also play defense. It's not the worst 1-2-3 punch to build a roster around. It makes some coherent sense. And then when you talk about long-term, we all know Miami doesn't reset for long. And if they're armed with players who are tradable on contracts that are tradable plus 3 firsts, I mean, are we talking about Joel Embiid this summer? Are we talking about Kevin Durant? Are we talking about,
I have this ready to go. We have another segment on that. But the Wiggins point is so good, and I agree with you, by the way. I'm equally on the fence. And, so when it's funny here, because these are the 2 teams that I covered the most, right? I covered the Warriors for a few years, and now I cover the Heat. And I was there in Golden State for the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry stuff, and then I was there for the beginning of the Andrew Wiggins year. And I covered that, and I left in the preseason the year they won the championship. So I technically covered them that last championship year. And I remember being around Andrew Wiggins that time. I was also around Wiggins when he first got there at the trade deadline when they traded D'Angelo Russell for him, and then before COVID shut down the league and all that stuff. And I remember right before COVID hit, I was writing a feature on him for the newspaper I was working at, and we rode in the back of a van from the Chase Center to San Francisco International Airport, which is like a 40-minute ride with traffic. And that's how long it took. And so I got to spend like 40 minutes in the back of a van with Andrew Wiggins. And I will tell you, I don't know anything more about Andrew Wiggins after that ride than I did before that ride. But one thing I did figure, I did kind of crack that nut a little bit towards the end there. And I got to know some of the people in his life, and I got to get into some of the stories, even dating back from high school. And the thing about him always was the lack of the killer instinct. Does he love the game? All that stuff. That's the stuff that really kind of seeps into the Heat culture part of it. Yeah. Where I think the conditioning, I think the no nonsense, that fits into the Heat culture right away. But does he have that little extra gear that he loves the game, like that he just basketball over everything else? I got to tell you, I'm not sure. And I know that might sound unfair, but I'm telling you, it's like, I think the book is out on Andrew Wiggins in terms of some nights it's off, some nights the switch is on. I think that's okay. Yeah. I think it's going to be okay because I think the no nonsense thing is what the Heat really care about. Because Jimmy Butler was an on-off switch guy too, but he also came with all the off-court accoutrements that they didn't have the patience for anymore. And I think with Wiggins, there is just a bottom of the ledger production that he has. Like it's just, it happens in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's not pretty, but he's gonna get you 18 points per game. And I think this Heat team just really needs those 18 points per game in whatever way they come. So that's my long explanation of I don't know whether or not Andrew Wiggins is going to be a Heat guy, but I'm very interested to find out.
I'll tell you, I think I know he's not going to be what you're referencing here, where it's like, does he turn it on for an extended streak? I think he's always going to be that, but he's in a position to be that and it work out. I mean, you're going to need more from Tyler Hero. There's probably Jaime Jaquez, maybe you need more from. Like, he moves up a spot. There's guys that maybe can share the mantle of what Jimmy would give you in a playoffs, and I don't expect it to be Wiggins. It's probably Wiggins sometimes, but I just don't. If you're counting on him to carry you home in series, for 4 straight games, I just don't think you're ever going to get that from him, and that's okay. That team is built to be able to withstand that.
My other Heat adjacent winner is Heat fans, because now instead of watching 2 alpha males in a pissing contest for 2 months, they get to actually watch basketball, which is nice.
Always nice.
Always good. That one was a little selfish. All right, next winner. Kevin Durant suitors.
Why?
Kevin Durant suitors. They're gonna be taking calls on Kevin Durant this summer, right?
Cat's out of the bag, man. And I'm sure these cats, this stuff is like, this is just now public, but him being so notably on the trade block ahead of this is like, it's over. In my opinion, it's over. Yeah. And so you're right that I don't know what Phoenix is doing. If they would, to me, would be one of the big losers. They still have a lot of talent, all those caveats, but you look at that and say vibes were already low, and now you publicly try to trade Kevin Durant. He sat out. Tim Legler was on the call for Suns at Thunder the night before the deadline. Oh, he has an ankle sprain. KD maybe deliberately went out and did a full workout, full speed, just to show everybody my ankle's fine. Like, I'm not playing. That's not why I'm not playing. And I just see those things, and I'm like, yeah, man. So suitors, I guess we know what the conversation is going to be this summer. If you love NBA trade talk, you're going to love June and July this year when those things heat up. If you hate them, as I do, who are the Warriors going to add? Or was LeBron and the Lakers going to do? Kevin Durant,
we don't do that anymore, right? The Lakers got Luka, the Warriors got Jimmy. Yeah, now it's going to be.
Well, they have to. Both those rosters have to fill out around them. I think. I don't know if either one of them is serious now, but next year is the summer of like, what are the role players? And then with Phoenix, of course, we have that. And who knows? Maybe you get some Embiid rumors or something else. But my point is, when have you ever heard about Kevin Durant and LeBron James offseason plans? Every year for the last 20 years. So welcome back, Groundhog Day. That's going to be the story this summer.
Miami, Minnesota, Memphis. Those are the teams that were mentioned for Kevin Durant before the trade deadline. I'm imagining they'll be mentioned for Kevin Durant this summer. 2 other teams that I want to throw at your way. Dallas, just because they seem to be doing anything at this point. Can't be ruled out. San Antonio. Why not? Just do it.
Why not?
Throw 3 picks. Give them the Hawks one. Some contracts. Here's Harrison Barnes, whatever.
Man, this one's tough. So we were just talking about young teams and going all in, right? With the Orlando Magic and this or that. And I do think there's a healthy and unhealthy way to do it. De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Durant, Victor Wembanyama. If you can hold on to some pieces and build around that, clearly that's the title favorite or as close as you're going to get. But when you talk about the long-term arc of Victor Wembanyama, are we ready to force him to be the number 2? Are we ready to force him to adjust his game into other things? Because I don't know if Kevin Durant goes there and says like, oh, you guys need me to get out the way. I just don't think that's a good use of KD. Plus, I don't think it's something he wants to do. So are you at a point with Victor on this ascension where we ask him to spend a year, 2, 3 years doing a role that we know he's not going to be doing once he reaches his prime? It's a tough one. The trade-off is you just might be title favorites anyway. And, if you can do that, you can do it.
I would do it. Yeah. I think we've gotten 2 years of Victor Wembanyama experimenting and figuring this out. And by the way, he did that in his last year in Paris also. So it's really been 3 years of just Victor Wembanyama doing whatever he wants. The thing about Wembanyama, and you talk to people that are close to him, I don't think he cares so much about doing whatever he wants. I really do think that he wants to win. And if you put Kevin Durant there, it's the one star who I would say, yes, he becomes the number 1 offensive option, I guess theoretically, but he's also a guy who just is easy plug and play anywhere. This isn't adding Luka to Victor Wembanyama, right? This is a guy who can stand off to the side, space the floor, and let De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama work out their 2-man game. And so if you could do this now, you get Durant for a couple of years, and then you just let him retire or you just let him walk or whatever, you still got the rest of Victor Wembanyama's future to do like another act, and hopefully you can get like 2 or 3 acts into Victor Wembanyama's career here. So
Yeah.
And the other part, he's maybe the best contract in the league, $12 million, top 10 player in the league right now. You might as well just do like rookie quarterback, like what the Eagles did to win the Super Bowl a few years ago, where it's just like, yeah, we got the rookie quarterback on a decent deal. We think we can win with him. Let's just flush out the roster with the best talent possible and make a run for it and figure it. I don't know.
Here's my take on it, because it's not about letting Wemby do what he wants. Jokic, I always think about if Jokic was not the first one in, if Michael Porter was, or Jamal Murray, how long does it take for Jokic to become the number one guy? Does it like, hey, we've already started building around this and now we do this? And so it's less like, I know Wemby would mold his game, but it's more about establishing your identity. And I don't think the Spurs have their identity yet. I actually think Fox is going to change that calculus a little bit. And there'll probably be a time for them to figure that out. But if you bring in KD and you go through 2-3 years, if you win a championship, it's all worth it. But if you don't, you get to a point where it's like, all right, Wemby's 25 now. And we actually don't know what his full skill set is because we've asked him to do this thing instead of that for the last 3 years. That's my only point. But to your point, if you win a title, what are we doing? And that team would have a great chance of winning a title every year they're all healthy.
Any winners that I forgot before we move on to losers?
I mean, we just got to San Antonio. As I scroll through, I don't think so. I kind of like the Clippers getting Bogdanovich.
I had them down.
Yeah.
That's a nice move. Yeah.
It's a small one, but yeah, can't blame that.
Losers. Let's just start with the Suns, I guess.
The big losers.
Here's my only question, and there's been enough talk about the Suns not doing anything in their pursuit of Jimmy Butler. My only question is this. How do you not have a plan already in place when you trade that 2031 pick unprotected for those 3 first-round picks?
Yeah.
I went out on Locked On Heat and I said, you only do this if you're 99.9% sure that you're getting Jimmy Butler. And we were preparing, like, all hands on deck. Jimmy Butler is getting traded to Phoenix. It was right before, I think, a game against Portland in Miami. I was there courtside when the news broke, and I'm like, all right, everybody, like, everybody agreed this is going to happen. Locked On made a graphic out of it with my name on the quote. You only do this if 99% sure. And I still stand by that. You only do that if you're 99.9% sure you're getting Jimmy Butler with those 3 first-round picks in some sort of multi-team deal. And yet the Phoenix Suns didn't.
Yeah.
And there's no excuse for that in my book. And that's the part I want to go to is how do you do that and not have that plan in place? Because what you end up doing with it now is you attach one to Yusuf Nurkic in a salary dump and you get Cody Martin back.
Matt Ishbia did not trade Kevin Durant to make it to the finals and lose. He didn't trade it to make it to the conference finals and lose. He didn't make it to make those trades and all the picks and all the future to make it to the second round. I don't see them. I would pick a bit against them right now, making it to the second round. They might not even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But beyond the second round is almost impossible for me to imagine. And the finals, like I would bet so much on them not winning the NBA finals this year. So if your goal was finals or bust, and you're looking at thinking it would be a miracle just to make it to the third round, let alone win it all, then you have to be realistic. They're the 9 seed. They're 25-25. Their vibes are the worst in the entire NBA, most likely. Everything's bad. To me, this was an opportunity to try to hit the reset. The one thing you do when you trade for Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant is, well, if everything goes south, we can recoup everything we paid because those guys are worth so much. They still have time to do those things, but there is just a layer to me of going, this felt like the moment. And I thought they were setting the table to either if you swing for the fences in Jimmy Butler, but if it doesn't work, swing the other way and then get restarted. And, the fact that they did nothing basically other than get rid of Nurkic and add a guy who's injured. Yeah, I just don't know.
And I think the biggest sin with this Matt Ishbia thing, the Suns to me have wasted valuable years of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker's prime.
Yeah.
Like Durant was averaging 30 points per game when he got traded to Phoenix. Devin Booker was 26 coming off of 3 straight All-Star appearances, and now he's missed 2 of the last 3. I just like these. Kevin Durant's an all-timer. Devin Booker was a perennial All-Star guy, and I just feel like they've wasted 2 years of these guys' prime, and it's a shame,
Yeah, I agree with you, man. It's not even a waste though. Part of this is what they wanted. I mean, in my opinion, did they want
this though? Did they want them to trade for Beal and lock them into this? I don't know that they signed up for that.
This is why I can not fully sympathize with what you're saying. Kevin Durant had the perfect team in Golden State, and he said that team ball is all pretty until it's not, and what you really need is a bunch of guys who can get you a bucket. Well, that's what he got, and he was wrong about that. So part of me goes, I don't know if he wanted Bradley Beal per se, But he did have a philosophy about what basketball should be, and he's had 2 straight in Brooklyn and here, 2 straight teams that have proven out that was wrong. That was a wrong assumption.
I've got the Warriors as losers.
TBD for me, but I'm not feeling great about it.
It just feels like they settled. Like the whole reasoning for the trade, you listen to some of the quotes that come out of Golden State, and all the reasoning can basically be summed up TLDR into a shrug emoji. Like they're just like, nah. And Mike Dunleavy Jr. even told the media, like, everybody who said that we weren't doing anything can't say that now. And it's like, okay, cool. Like that shouldn't be the reason to make this trade. I understand that at the same, like, Warriors fans were desperate for them to do something, right? Do something, show Steph that you care, that you're trying, and they did do that. But I don't know that this is what, like, they had to settle for. Like it was a settle. Like they had to settle for Jimmy Butler. They wanted Kevin Durant. They settled for Jimmy Butler. I cannot believe the reporting around that Kevin Durant situation where Joe Lacob was reportedly shocked that Kevin Durant didn't want to come back, like flabbergasted, like could not comprehend why Kevin Durant would not want to come back. And it's like, really? You can't figure this one out?
Yeah,
so,
man.
I don't know. It's like, meh.
Sometimes the smartest people in the world are also the dumbest.
You're not talking about me right now, are you?
I'm not, well. Sometimes the dumbest people in the world are also the smartest, and that's how I would do that.
Right, that's right. Next loser. Masai Ujiri's reputation.
You don't like the team they got?
What's going on in Toronto and what has gone on in Toronto? Here's my take on Masai Ujiri and Nick Nurse for the record. These guys are still drinking on Kawhi Leonard's tab from 2019. Like, they are just still like, is Kawhi even here? We don't even know, but the tab is still open. Just get us 2 more Guinnesses. Just keep drinking on the tab. Just keep putting it on tab. Like, we're never going to have to pay for this. These guys, what have either of these guys done at a high level since winning the championship on Kawhi Leonard's back in 2019?
Well, first of all, Guinness is my favorite beer, but if you're ordering it at the end of the tab, like that's your last drink, I think you're doing it wrong. That's like a first beer, not a last beer. So I'll correct you there. No, I don't know what their plan is. If I try to like justify it, and I haven't actually heard any reporting out of there, so I don't even know what Masai Ujiri has said to justify it, but wings are so valuable. They're so rare, and they've hoarded them. So if you're not going anywhere, maybe the philosophy is like, would teams want Brandon Ingram at the last part of his deal, especially if you can
drafting
rehab it?
8 quarterbacks in your fantasy football league.
Yeah, it kind of is. And now it's like, oh man, you really need a quarterback. I've got all of them. So I don't know. I mean, they have a lot of players that I kind of like a little bit.
Same.
And maybe one of them turns into a really good draft asset that they flip to start a new era. But when you asked about Masai Ujiri, one thing I will say is I think this happens with owners, and I think it happens even with GMs. You win a title and you almost focus on other things that you've put on the back burner. You know, like I've had these other things. And I think Masai has a lot of things. I wonder if basketball has been the priority. GMing has been the priority that it was in 2018 when he built that roster. And I wonder if it's almost like, well, I scratched that box. I still do this, but I also do this.
Well, wasn't the report that he was going to go to the Knicks a couple years ago?
A couple years back, recruiting him for that.
And didn't he end up getting like an ownership stake in the Raptors? Or just some sort of an enormous contract? Is it just a money move?
There's equity play. I don't know if it's a money move. You know, it's so hard to build a championship team, and when you're so far, the steps to get there are tough. I don't know what they're doing. I do think they have some good talent, and you know what? We'll wait and see. But they almost feel more like the Chicago Bulls than like Masai's previous teams, right? Where they're just kind of like on the hamster wheel. We'll see, man.
Yeah, they haven't done the thing where they go full tank. They kind of got Scotty Barnes, and they were like, all right, we're good. We got our star. We're going to build around him. And I appreciate the commitment and the vision there in that. But then the vision gets really blurry after that. And they've kind of done the big wing thing where they can all play defense, but nobody can play offense. And now they've kind of gone the other way where they have all these big wings who can all play offense, but they can't play defense. It's just, I'm not really sure what's going on there, and I'm not sure that they have a good direction. I have the Grizzlies as another loser there. I understand why they did what they did, but they had to attach a first to get off of Marcus Smart, who they traded 2 first-round picks for. They struck out on Kevin Durant and Jimmy Butler. And I think, I'm okay with the Marcus Smart thing because, look, you took a shot at a guy who you thought would fit. He got hurt. It didn't work out. And then you had to clear the books to go get Jaren Jackson his money for this summer. So I get that. I'm not overly critical of the front office because I think we have enough evidence to show that the Grizzlies have a really good front office.
Yeah.
They draft really well. They're good talent evaluators, etc. This one didn't work out. I like that they chased Durant. I like that they called about Jimmy Butler. Both of those guys said I have no interest in playing there. And the reason I have the Grizzlies as losers is because if they didn't know it before, they definitely know it now. No star ever wants to go to Memphis. And that sucks. And it's not their fault, but they are losers nonetheless.
They are, I guess, a little bit losers there, but I don't mind them doing what they did here. They had to get rid of somebody. I'm glad they chose Smart, not Kennard, because I think Kennard actually has more value to them. And you're right that no star wants to go to Memphis, but you're trying to trade for 2 stars that had the ability to say no to that. Not every star does. And, you know, I think they're a great coach, and they have built up. Think about, if you look at their assets coming into the year, you just look at picks, right? But now you look at it and go, Jalen Wells is an asset if you want him to be, because he's a player. You know, Gigi's an asset. Scottie Pippen Jr. might be an asset. Like, they now have built guys into assets should they want to use them that way. And so they lost Marcus Smart. They lost a pick, but I think they're still a net positive on the year from where they started.
Totally agree, and they deserve to be near the top of the Western Conference. Did I lose? Did I forget any losers here? Did I? James Wiseman? Ugh, tough for him. Traded to Toronto, then waived. His career might be over. That was a.
Here's the only team I'll tell you that is a maybe for me, and it's the Houston Rockets. And I love the Houston Rockets. The question you always had, they're a young team, and they were feeling themselves because for the longest they were the number 2 seed, and it was like they were going to make a move. They were going to be the Butler destination or Fox, you know, or whatever. And when they played so well that it was like, no, we've got the team. Let's do what we're talking about with the Magic. Let's just see how good this team is and adjust after. Well, here they are in a 5-game losing streak at the worst time, because it's like all year your confidence was a 100 that the no move was needed. But if this is what happens and they fall to a 6 seed, which is very reasonable. I mean, they're already down to 4, I believe, and they've only had 2 bad weeks of play. If you end up after all of this as the 7 seed, 6 or 7, and you're like, well, we didn't make a move because we thought we had, you know, we were
in the play-in tournament,
and all of a sudden now we've got a matchup with, say, you know, at Denver, or we got to go through a play-in and we lose, and now we have Oklahoma City in the first round. We lose in 4 games. It's like, what did we learn? We thought we were going to learn way more than we actually did. So I'm not calling them a loser yet, but there is a doomsday scenario because of the slide that they're on, where at the end things shake out where they were projected to shake out, and you didn't.
That might end up being the best case scenario for them, though.
Could be,
right? Because you lose, like, hey, we had like a really good half year. Then we kind of slid. We ended up getting an unfortunate playoff seeding. Then we lost in the first round. We actually are that piece away, and we're not going to kind of like love the smell of our own farts as much as maybe we were. On the the exact opposite, by the way, and I should have included them, the Portland Trailblazers. They've won like 9 out of 10 games. Like they're surging right now, and I think they decided, actually, we're a pretty good team. We're not going to trade anybody. Where everybody was like, they're going to trade a bunch of these guys, and I don't think they're that good of a team. And I think they probably should have traded some of these guys.
Maybe the one thing I'll say about them, they have the Memphis thing going on too, where they've collected assets by virtue of that.
I hit the button there. That's okay. It was the 52nd minute of the show. But that'll do it. Winners, losers. I don't think I forgot anybody. Sorry that I cut you off there by accident, Adam. Anybody else that I forgot?
I don't think so.
Super Bowl coverage. It was tough week for Super Bowl coverage. That's about it.
Trust me, man, as somebody who's in charge of Super Bowl coverage at All City, I was feeling it. The NBA kind of swagger jacked.
Really?
Swagger jacked them, yeah.
Interesting to hear from the content creator himself. There it is. Thanks so much, Adam, for jumping on here. Of course, if you guys don't know Adam Ades, you can find him at the All NBA podcast, DNVR Sports. He's in charge of a bunch of stuff over there at All City. Adam, thanks so much. Always good talking to you, man.
Always good to do it, man.
Appreciate it.